Let me tell you the biggest mistake people make when they try to buy a storage facility. And that's that they look for one deal, one opportunity. They're looking for a lucky break, but real operators don't just look for deals, they build a deal flow machine. Because when you only have one deal on your desk or in your inbox, you're going to start to feel pressure. You're going to start to make a higher offer. You're going to start to just make bad choices because you only have literally one crack at it. You start to second guess the numbers. You're negotiating from a place of weakness. And when you have 5, 10, 15, 30 opportunities in your pipeline, things start to change. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to build your deal flow machine. And that's a simple system that consistently produces storage opportunities so that you're never wondering when the next deal is coming from. You just look into your deal pipeline and you always have opportunities coming your way. Let's jump right into it in the deal flow machine. Alex Pardo here, welcome back. And we're going to continue to build on everything that we've been doing in the cash flow maps acquisition system. And we just talked in the previous video, the direct contact blueprint, and hopefully you've already started to have meaningful conversations with mom and pop storage owners. And I want to continue to encourage you to lean into that. And I want you to put the reps in and put the time in so that you understand how to connect with mom and pop storage owners, what questions to ask them, how to build relationships. And I want to go ahead and plant this seed. And I wanted to include this in module 3 deal flow because at some point you're probably going to want to scale because look, there's only one of you. And I want you to understand how to create consistent leads and consistent deal flow that doesn't always depend on you doing the work. And this is something I call the deal flow machine, because when you build this right, you wake up to new storage leads waiting for you without you having to be the one rolling up your sleeves, getting on the phone, having conversations. And this is not hype, it's leverage, because every successful storage operator I know, no matter who you can think of, they all have one thing in common. They've built systems with people around them so that the business continues to move, whether they're at their desk, their home office, in front of a computer, on the phone, or not. And that's what we're going to start to build together here. Now, I want to go ahead and preface before I launch into this training and into this video. You may actually feel like you're not ready for this yet. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Why? Because I want you to get comfortable. I want you to have so many reps and have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calls behind you before you get to the point where you're just going to abdicate this, unless you have a 9-to-5 job or you have another business that's your priority and you're building your storage business on the side. And so you need to leverage somebody else. And then if that's the case, then I encourage that. But I think it's always easier to train somebody and then hold them accountable when you understand the process and you know what you're doing versus just abdicating that responsibility to somebody else. And then you don't really know how to manage them, how to train them if you're doing it right. And so I want to go ahead and first talk about the mindset shift. And because when you're first getting started, it is super normal to wear all the hats, right? You're doing everything. You're researching markets. You're connecting the direct contact blueprint that we just talked about. You're having conversations, meaningful conversations. You're following up. We haven't gotten there yet, but eventually you're going to be evaluating deals using our deal filter system. You're going to be making offers. And like before you know it, you're spinning all these plates. And it can feel at times like you're buying yourself another job. Now, I will say that right now, for a lot of people, you're in a season where you need to roll up the sleeves and put the reps in so that you understand the process. I think that's really important that you understand this before you start to get people to help you with certain things. Unless they, you're going to put them through the training and they just have a certain aptitude where they get it, they want it, and they have the capacity for this. Something in the traction world that they call GWC. They get it, they want it, and they have the capacity. Well, the moment that you bring on even one capable virtual assistant or a team member, somebody who you've trained, somebody who's dependable, who's reliable, that is aligned with your goals, and they understand the big picture and why you're doing this, you start to shift from what Michael Gerber in the E-Myth talks about, the technician, to essentially the operator, right? The entrepreneur. You're no longer just working in the business. Now you're starting to build a machine that works for you, whether you work or not. And I think that's what a lot of people want. It's a business that works for them, because that's the purpose of this business. It's meant to help you buy back your time so that you can do the things with your loved ones that are important to you. And that's the mindset. Okay, you're not I don't want you to think about just outsourcing tasks. You're buying back your time so that you can focus on $10,000 an hour activities and up, like negotiating deals, building relationships, raising capital, deal structuring, etc., joint ventures. Like that is the activity I want you spending your time on, not necessarily on always like building a list and doing the technician work that a capable, trained virtual assistant or team member can help you do. So I want to talk to you now about something I call the deals engine framework. Okay. And the first D, right? The D in deals is define the role. So I want to talk to you now about how we can go out and find the right person. And I'm recommending a virtual assistant to help you with two things: to help you when it comes to research, when it helps you when it comes to marketing. And I would consider research and marketing, I'd kind of put those in the same bucket. And then even finding the right virtual assistant that can do outreach, that can have the meaningful conversations on your behalf. In fact, we have somebody in our Storage Wins community who has wholesaled 3 storage facilities to other people in our community, and he has built a system. He's got a virtual assistant that is out there building his list, doing outreach, right? Picking up the phone, having meaningful conversations with storage owners. And then when he identifies somebody that is interested in selling their facility, he schedules an appointment for this other person in our community. Then he gets on the phone to put the deal, take the deal over the finish line, get it under contract. And if it doesn't fit his buy box blueprint, it becomes a wholesale deal. So just this year alone, he's generated, I want to say, close to $200,000 in profits from 3 storage wholesale deals. And it was all driven primarily by his virtual assistant. His virtual assistant did a lot of the heavy lifting. So now let's start to dive into this. Now, there are 2 primary virtual assistant or VA positions that every storage investor should know. And I just touched on them. The first is the research virtual assistant. And this is somebody who's out there researching markets for you. They're building your storage list of prospects and mom and pop storage owners. They're out there finding the mom and pop facilities. They're gathering contact information. They're updating your cash flow maps lead tracker. They're sending emails when they go to the contact us page. They're filling out web form. Like they're constantly moving things forward so that when you're sleeping or you're working or you're hanging out with family, your list and your prospect list is continually being built and you have people doing some outreach. And that leads me to the second one, an actual outreach, like following the direct contact blueprint and actually somebody out there that's going to be making outbound calls and connecting with people on a daily basis, making sure that they're nurturing the warm leads and that they're essentially queuing up the warm, hot sellers, the people that have raised their hand and said, I'm interested in selling. They're actually scheduling an appointment for you, or they're, depending on if you have a phone tree system, they're clicking a button and passing that along to you. So those are the 2 types of virtual assistants that I think are pretty common. In some cases, when people graduate and they find a really good team member, you can now have an acquisitions person. But I find that this is not typically a virtual assistant. I would recommend that for now, if you're considering hiring a virtual assistant, they help you with research, marketing, and then outbound calling or any type of like outreach, emails, contacts, things of that nature. Now, inside of our storage community, we actually have some specific training that walks people through this. And we're actually going to take one of those resources, and we're going to actually make it available. So somewhere on this page in the resources section, I want to encourage you to download that document because it'll help you. You'll find a ready to use job ad and post for that role. And look, here's the secret sauce. In the post, I ask every applicant to send me, to do something, to jump through a hoop. Why? Because whenever I post a job ad, I don't want to create another job for myself. I don't want to read resumes. I don't want to have to learn a bunch of stuff about people that may or may not matter. So I typically ask them to do 1 or 2 small things to help them filter themselves in or out. As an example, I might have them send an email, and in the subject line, I would have them put the word storage in all caps. And if they don't do that, they automatically disqualify themselves. In some cases, depending on the role, I might have them send me, especially if I'm going to do outbound calling, I want to see how they communicate. I'll have them send me a 3-minute video explaining a little bit about themselves, their interest, why they're interested in joining the company, why they're interested in this position, what they feel they can bring. And that way I get to see how they communicate. Do they have a thick accent? How do they carry themselves, etc. And that step alone filters out probably 80 to 90% of low quality applicants that And it just instantly shows you who pays attention and who can follow directions. And that's the kind of virtual assistant I want. Somebody who's smart, capable, reliable, can follow directions, is a quick learner, just has a certain work ethic about themselves. And look, in terms of, because I have a coaching client inside the Storage Wins community that I remember he was concerned. He's like, I don't think I have enough work for this virtual assistant. Well, like 3 to 4 months later, he just doubled the virtual assistant's hours. And it's been a complete game changer for him. I think the VA now is putting in about 30, 35 hours a week, where he initially started with like 10 to 15. So he doubled to tripled the virtual assistant's hours. So trust me when I tell you that you can have plenty of work for the virtual assistant, especially if you're following the blueprint here. If you're following the cash flow map system that we've laid out for you, then your virtual assistant should always be building your list. They can always be doing any type of outreach. And then I oftentimes get the question like, hey, Alex, what should I pay a virtual assistant? Generally speaking, you're probably going to be anywhere in the $4 to $10 an hour range, depending on their experience, depending on some different factors. But I will tell you that the $6 to $8 an hour range, or $6 to $10 even on the high end, if you found the right person, that can be worth its weight in gold. So that's the D in the deals engine framework, which is number one is you want to define the role. And again, we have a resource for you that's going to help you. Now the E in the deals engine framework is you want to evaluate candidates. And where do you find them? Now there's a million places you can find virtual assistants. If you just do a Google search, an AI search on ChatGPT or any AI tool that you use, you're going to find numerous places. I like a couple different ones in particular. Onlinejobs.ph is best for loyal long-term hires. These are people in the Philippines. I like working with Filipinos. I think they're very friendly. They have a strong work ethic. Now with anything, obviously, you got to interview them. You got to make sure it's the right fit. There's different experience levels. You want to be able to communicate with them and see how they communicate. How's their accent, especially if you're going to have them doing outbound calling. I also like Upwork, which is great for short-term or trial projects. And you can find somebody even long-term on Upwork. And there's agencies out there. And I have mixed feelings on agencies. Oftentimes agencies will charge you premiums. They'll charge you, it could be a placement fee, and their USP, their unique selling proposition is that, hey, they're trained, or we're going to train them for you. And again, I have mixed feelings. I have some friends that have some agencies, and I think by and large, they do a good job, but it's going to cost you. And so if you're not willing to do the work to find the person, or you just don't have the time and energy, maybe an agency makes sense. I don't typically recommend them just because they can be very, very expensive. Like they might charge you $10 to $12 an hour, and then they're making a spread on you, which is okay. I don't mind that if they're finding the right virtual assistant, but I often find that you have to train them anyways. So don't abdicate the responsibility of just assuming because they're trained. You still have to train them on your process and your ways and what you're looking for. So I think you're just better off going direct and finding the right person. I've had virtual assistants that have been with me for years. So when you find the right VA, again, it could be worth its weight in gold. Quick heads up, YouTube gives you the education, but inside the Cashflow Maps membership, you get the implementation. Every single module unlocked, all the spreadsheets, underwriting calculators, templates, scripts, everything neatly organized in one place so that you can actually execute. If you want the full system, instead of having to piece together the videos here on YouTube, click the link in the description, create your free account, and get access right now. Now let's keep going. Now, when you interview these virtual assistants, I always like to ask, there's always 2 or 3 things I always ask. One of the things is, how do you stay organized with repetitive tasks? Because they're going to be doing the same thing day in and day out. And I want to make sure that they're of the mindset. They have the disposition where they actually like that. They like structure. They like, hey, here's what I need to do. And they're also able to think on their own, and they're a strong communicator. I always ask sometimes, hey, tell me about a time where you had to follow a daily process. And I'm looking for clues that tell me that this might not be the right person. And otherwise, these questions are meant to see if they're going to disqualify themselves. I always like to find out about how reliable is their internet. I have them show me their internet speed, their working setup. Do they have an environment that is conducive? Because oftentimes when you work with virtual assistants overseas, they have power outages and the internet goes down. And I've had virtual assistants that ghosted me for like over a month. And it wasn't because they wanted to ghost me. It's because they were in a part of the Philippines where like the power would go out for weeks and months on end and they had no way to communicate. So you want to find out about that. If you're hiring a cold caller, I would always have them record at least a 60-second audio clip so you can hear their fluency, their tone. Sometimes I even role play with them, like on the spot, and they might not know a thing about storage, but I want to see how they're able to adapt and think on their feet, even when they don't have a script, a framework, and the tools. I always hire for attitude and coachability because those are things that you can't really give them. They either have the right attitude and mindset or they don't. They're either coachable or they're not. I'm not looking to take somebody who's not coachable and try to make them coachable. That's not a fit. I'm not looking for real estate experience because I can train that, but I can't train character. So moving along here in the deals engine framework, the A is for automate workflows. And here's your cash flow maps lead tracker. And some of the resources that we're giving you here come in because I just want to kind of give you a bird's eye view of a workflow example. And number one, let's start with the research phase. And this can be, they spend 2 to 3 hours a day on this. And this is, they're out there finding new facilities in your buy box markets using Google Maps, using Facebook Marketplace. And as an aside, in the amplifier training session, there's going to be a section in there called Accelerate and Dominate, where I get into other ways, other marketing channels for you to go ahead and locate these mom and pop storage facilities. So don't skip ahead now. Please continue to follow the training here. But once you get to the AMP sessions, you'll find in the Accelerate and Dominate training some specific ways, and you can use that to teach them. Doing Google searches, jumping on Facebook Marketplace, Facebook storage groups. There's a variety of ways. The rent gap sniper method, which again, we're not going to talk about here. That'll be in the AMP sessions. But really what you want them to do is just collect information. They're a data collector. Collect the name, the address, email, phone number, website, Google review data, have them fill out your cash flow maps lead tracker, note any poor websites, broken links, missing online presence. Again, you have that cash flow maps lead tracker, so give them access to that. The second part of this is outreach. And outreach, you can use the direct contact blueprint framework that is a resource in the previous video, and make sure that they're taking notes. Make sure that you can just look at a lead and understand where it's at and what phase it's in. And then I think this is super important that people miss the boat on this is the reporting phase. Is at the end of the day, especially the first 90 days of you working with somebody, have them send an email updating you on their progress. Hey, what went well for the day? What questions, concerns, or comments do they have? And then what are they going to focus on the next day? And I think it's super, super important that you track certain KPIs, right? Like how many, if they're calling, how many outbound dials, how many meaningful conversations, because I think that's what really matters, how many appointments were scheduled. So figure out what are the important KPIs, key performance indicators, that you can track, measure, and hold accountable to. Very, very important. You can keep it simple with Google Sheets. You can use WhatsApp for communication, Loom for creating any type of videos and SOPs and training and things of that nature. If you want to time track, there's something called Time Doctor. I've used it in the past, but I trust my process that when I find the right person, I don't want to be looking over their shoulder, but it is an extra layer of accountability. But really what you want to do is you want to try to automate the inputs, not necessarily the outcomes. So have them focus on the daily actions that they can control, not necessarily whether a seller calls back, right? That's probably not going to be a KPI that I track. But moving on here in the deals engine framework, the L is for lead and manage. And understand that hiring a virtual assistant is not a set it and forget it move. You still need to lead them. You need to coach them. You need to hold them accountable. And each VA, at least when they work with me, they have some simple KPIs that I just touched on. How many, especially if they're doing on the marketing side, like how many new leads per day? And I want to see a minimum of 25 per day. If they're calling, how long did they call? How many dials? How many meaningful conversations, which is really the big one I look at. And you can track, there's any number of ways, but you can absolutely use the cash flow maps lead tracker. And then once a week, we always do a 10 to 15 minute check-in. Hey, what are some wins? We start with the wins. What are some challenges and things that you need help and support in? And then what's the focus moving forward? And make sure that they're tied back to the purpose and the why. And it's more than just money. One thing that I like to do is I like to praise consistency. So praise the things that you want more of. Same thing. If you're a parent and you have a kid or you have a little one, for us anyways, we want to encourage and praise the behavior and the activity that I want more of. And when you recognize progress, your VAs are going to give you their best work. I do like to bonus them if I end up closing a deal. Now, understand that they have zero control if we end up buying a deal or not. But I want them to know that there's this carrot at the end of this long stick that if one of the leads they generate ends up turning into the deal, I'm going to bonus them. And that can be even $1,000, which $1,000 to an overseas virtual assistant can be a lot of money. Understand that. So make sure that anyone you work with, I don't care if it's a virtual assistant or a high level, COO, that they feel that they're part of the right culture, a community. Sometimes I see people treating virtual assistants like it's just outsourced work, whatever. They don't include them in like team meetings and things of that nature. No, they're just as much a part of your team and they're an important part of your team. So treat them as such. Say thank you, share results, celebrate wins. Loyalty, understand, is a two-way street. All right. So moving on here, the S in deals stands for scale and simplicity. Once you've had one virtual assistant running smoothly for a few weeks, you can start to duplicate that system. And here's a pro tip. If you find a really, really good virtual assistant, it's that whole birds of a feather flock together and you're looking to grow, find out if they have any other people like them, any other friends that are looking for work. Now, you still, just because they're referred and recommended, you still want to take them through your process, but I have found virtual assistants that way. So here are 3 ways to grow. Number 1, you can clone the role by hiring a second virtual assistant to now either assist that person or just do additional research, additional cold calling. I have a friend of mine that has at least 2, if not more, virtual assistants that are making outbound dials every single day, and they're generating leads as a result. I like to try to promote from within whenever it makes sense. And maybe your virtual assistant can elevate into something else, depending on their aptitude, depending on their skill sets, depending on their goals. And then you can start to elevate where eventually maybe if you want to step out of the acquisitions role, which I don't recommend at this stage for you, you can possibly find the right person to do that. So look, filter all of this with your goals and your vision, right? Like you may not have a goal to build a big team, and that's perfectly fine. But I think a virtual assistant, the right virtual assistant, can help you buy back your time and take a lot off of your plate that isn't worth you spending your time. Okay, because every 10 hours of repetitive work should be at least in a standard operating procedure. That's how it starts to compound. One of the things I like to do is teach and train a virtual assistant on a certain process. Most of the time I'll have an SOP for that, but if not, I'll have them create the SOP, or I will train them once on a video, and then we'll convert that into a playbook or a standard operating procedure. And the amazing thing is that these days with AI, you can feed it a transcript and you can have it knock out just an incredible standard operating procedure or playbook for you. So that's how you start to build this deal flow machine, where whatever it is that you're doing, I always ask myself, can I automate this? Can I delegate it? Can I outsource it? Or can I delete it? Sometimes we do things that we do it out of habit, but we don't necessarily have to do it. So here's your action plan: is download the resource. And you might want to figure out, hey, maybe you're not at the time where you want to hire a virtual assistant, but give yourself a deadline and say, hey, I'm going to continue to do this work. And maybe 30, 60, 90 days from now is the time to place an ad on Online Jobs PH or Upwork or any number of places, and start to bring on a virtual assistant that can help you with your marketing, can help you with your research, and maybe even doing outbound dialing for you. So this is one where it's not a one size fits all. You really have to determine where you're at in life and in your career and business. Do you have a full workload and you have family and kids, and you're just, if you're not going to be consistent putting in the time, energy, and effort, then find somebody that will, and then start to generate those leads. But at the end of the day, you're gonna have to sacrifice something if you ultimately, truly wanna have success in the storage business. You wanna close your first deal, you wanna generate cash flow, build wealth. There's gonna be an exchange of time, energy. And so don't shy away from that, but lean into it. So with that being said, I wanna encourage you to start thinking about building your deal flow machine and see how fast momentum starts to build when it just doesn't rely on you. That's a wrap on this one, but before I let you go, remember something. Successful storage investors don't rely on luck, they rely on systems, because when you consistently build your list, you reach out to storage owners, you track the meaningful conversations, and you follow up with discipline, then deal flow stops feeling and being random and starts being more predictable. Because what you've seen here is just one piece, it's one slice of the pie of the Cashflow Maps acquisition system. Now, inside the full system, you're gonna actually get access to all the training modules, videos, the complete step-by-step framework, and then most importantly, the tools, the templates, the resources that I actually use in my storage business and that my coaching clients use in the Storage Wins community. And these are the tools and resources that are not available here on YouTube. So if you want access to the entire system, go ahead and click on the link in the description below and create your free Cashflow Maps account. Everything is neatly organized for you step by step so that you can plug in, execute, and implement. I'll see you on the inside.